Wrath of Angels. Chapter 5. Scene 4. Fighting Withdrawal. The Silent Spire, northern vestibule to extraction zone, during the 6th hour of the Tyranid onslaught. Month 10, year 260, the 41st millennium. The knave remembered it had once been a mountain, and chose to move like one. Cracks ran up the vault like veins filling, ribs groaned, frost lifted and fell in skins, the way a giant's breath fogs and clears. The echo that had been a child's mockery gave up its game, and stretched itself into a tight wire of a word, unforgiven, until even that snapped under the sound of claws. On the line, Varikan said, and a line appeared because he said it. The emerald vow drew back 5 paces in a single inhalation, then 4, then 3, each step a squeezed treaty between drill and pressure. Shields overlapped, rims biting rims. Muzzles spoke by the count. Boot soles found purchase in slush made of ichor, ice, and old sanctity. Their retreat was not a collapse but a liturgy. They recited it with bone, plate, and powder. The silent hunt became a seam ripper. Kalen cut a corridor down the nave's left artery, as if the room were cloth and speed were a needle. Celian's distances flattened into drumbeats. 40, 37, 32. Each number a rung on a ladder they meant to climb. Vaynar's counts clipped tighter, shaving seconds like a barber taking pride in neatness. Orath's laughter narrowed into a blade he kept clenched between his teeth. Tyrion's silence held the temperature of iron in January. Engines snarled, then purred, then snarled again in the precise cadence of throttles trained to think. The Oathbound made themselves a hinge with no patience for squeal. Dominiel shortened Mortalis to elbow and wrist. Punctuation delivered intimate and final. Lutharian's shield learned new dents and taught them to his shoulder with honest pain. A hairline crack ran across the boss like a question searching for a scholar. Zephani's grin burned down to a steady light. Ramiel's litany found a register that felt like stone being persuaded to endure. Abriath's calm voice mapped the air into lanes and closures and made the rest of the world follow the math or be called a liar. Around them, the intercessor cadres bled time into space. A standard squad on the left reversed in textbook order. Rear man firing, sidestep, next man firing. A human metronome with teeth. It worked until a Genestealer slid along the floor like a stain and found a gap before anyone else believed the gap was there. Brother Kenvar, who always ate double rations in the mess and said the Emperor had given him the stomach of 2 men, took the claw from groin to sternum with a small grunt and folded as if kneeling at a prayer he had not chosen. The squad dragged him 3 paces by the harness. The harness creaked, then gave. Garen's voice cut across their grief. Leave him. Later, someone muttered that the servitors would save weight now, and the silence that followed cost more than the joke had ever been worth. Brother Merrick stooped without thinking and tore Kenvar's company token from his gorget, polished brass stamped with a lion's head, and pressed it into his own pouch with a motion that said someone will remember. He would not speak of it later, but he would polish it in the dark. On the right, heavy intercessors who had been a wall were a reef now, tide breaking and foaming over them. Patience made claws. Brother Corvin, anchor, once carved tally lines into ammo crates while waiting for deployment. An honest man's defiance of time. He stood unyielding as Hormagaunts climbed him waist deep. His bolt feed clicked empty. He beat the next gaunt's face with his gun until the muzzle buried in meat. He drew his sidearm and made the remainder of his argument at breath's length. Someone else's claw found his back. He went down still pointing his weapon in the correct direction, which is more than most men manage at the end. Brother Laysan, the loud one, famous for recaf complaints delivered with zeal at any hour, swore at the jam that came 1 round early and was lost under scythes mid-reload. The mess would be quieter. No one wanted it to be. Another heavy, Brother Prax, who collected lost purity seals from firing ranges and stuck them back where they belonged, whether men noticed or not, took a scythe through the calf and went to one knee. He propped his weapon on a broken pew and fired until the barrel glowed, then until it seized, then until the recoil became nothing but the memory of recoil. "Hold your lane," he rasped to no one and everyone, and then the tide taught him what lanes mean to water. "Step," Varikan said. The vow stepped, shields breathing, banner steady. Malvin's cloth had a ragged gash bound with wax and scripture. The lion's device stared like a patient animal that had eaten worse. Ephraim's prayer collapsed into breath and breathed on. Jorath's trigger tremor attempted to return. Garen's gauntlet closed, and tremor decided to be useful elsewhere. Druvan ground a set of old prints, heels too close, stride too narrow, into paste with his heel, and erased the remainder of the story the floor had tried to tell. The wall took a pincer and answered with geometry. A squad on the vow's right knuckled shields into a chevron, shoulders straining, armor grating. A leaper hit the point with gymnastic contempt and bounced off Lutherian's shield, as if the metal had been insulted and decided to argue. Jaws snapped on ceramite. Ephraim shot it through the pallet, and the round ricocheted off the vault with a sound like a bell learning manners. Assault intercessors on center right paid Zeal's tithe. Brother Teriel, who loved to shout scripture during cage spars just to irritate his partners, fought 3 Genestealers at once and might have won if a leper hadn't dropped from the clearstream like bad punctuation. His chains had sang until the teeth broke. The song ended mid-word. The line felt thinner in a way no bolter could fix. Brother Haelric, earnest, reckless, first to arm a chain blade at rights and last to sleep, led a thrust to cover the wall's pivot. He died in 2 neat pieces, and one of his brothers muttered, "Always too quick to start, too slow to stop," and kept firing until his magazine rattled dry. Their sergeant fought with a jaw hanging loose and a spine deciding, killed 3, perhaps 4. Counting is vulgar while a man works. And then a scythe rewrote his posture. The squad appointed a new sergeant by the old method. Follow the one still standing and don't ask him if he wants it. Half would live. The other half had done enough. Brother Admon, habitual singer in the mess, voice surprisingly gentle for a man built like a locker, caught the new sergeant's eye as they fell back. He mouthed a word that might have been here or now or yes, then turned and took a Genestealer under the chin with his pistol like a hammer. Above, jump pack intercessors learned the building hated altitude. Brother Venner, prankster, painted his squad's insignia upside down on his jump pack once to see who noticed, was seized mid-arc by 2 leapers that used him like a handshake. He fell trailing bright fuel and a laugh no one heard. Brother Arios, the quiet one who kept storm notes from Thunderhawk portholes, took 2 claws through the pauldron while banking and cartwheeled into darkness, his pack coughing a last blue sigh. Brother Ilvan, who always overcorrected his landings because he'd been told once that caution is cheap, clipped a rafter, ricocheted, and still managed to double-tap a leaper under him before a Hormagaunt pile swallowed his boots. He screamed, "Up!" at his own legs, which failed to be persuaded. The rafters cracked. A plate of ice dropped and took an assault brother across the shoulders. He staggered, knee through slush, and a Genestealer finished the line of the sentence his death had begun. Another grabbed the body by the belts and used it to trample a lane. The Emerald Vow took that lane and made it law. The Silent Hunt opened a path to the vestibule and kept it open by being itself. Kalen rode the outer arc, reading pressure the way a surgeon reads pulse. Tyrion slipped knives of speed into impossible gaps. Orath shredded a saint's calves with his tires, just to hear the crash bury gaunts. Vanar called the beat. Celion turned the beat into meters and seconds. The world accepted the conversion to avoid argument. Vestibule in 40, Celion voxed, voice like a taut string. 35, Vanar followed, arithmetic done ahead of time. 30, Celion adjusted, a concession to optimism earned by skill. On the Vow's far left, Sergeant Drennick, collector of discarded cartridges, champion of tidy ranges, shouldered Brother Merrick aside and fired a measured double at a lictor that had mistaken the sergeant for a man who tolerated personal space. The creature's torso came apart in a grudging way. "Pick your brass later," Drennick snapped. "I'll haunt you if you don't." He meant it kindly and made it sound like an audit. The Oathbound held the hinge. Dominial's gauntlet was glazed with frozen blood. Mortalis wiped itself clean on skulls every rotation. Lutharian's shield felt heavier than truth and truer than weight. Zephonis' laughter had become a quiet grin sharpened to hurt. Ramiel's voice dropped until the child echo sulked and gave up. Sometimes you can bore malice into obedience. Abriath counted. Meters, bodies, seconds. Deaths he could delay and deaths he could not. A lictor arrived late and correct. It slid along the wall like poured shadow, dissolved, reappeared behind a standard squad's vox bearer, lifted claws like an organist raising both hands, and cut cable and spine in one motion. The channel filled with white hiss and the echo's petty choir. Abriath took note the way accountants take notes. Lane 8 closed, he said, then stepped into it and reopened it with a cut so exact it could have been taught. The lictor tried to decide which half of itself should hate him more and lost interest. The spire decided to help. A vault rib shrieked and let go, dropping a jaw's worth of icicles onto friend and enemy with impartial rancor. A saint's face slid off in a sheet and shattered into sugar. Snow refilled the cracks with sincerity. The knave's throat pulsed, and everything in it tried to choke them. "Wall, halve," Varican said, and the vow split clean on the word. Two lips of iron pulling back from a passage that had not existed until obedience made it. Standard squads poured through the gap in disciplined panic, that special speed angels reserve for when truth has a schedule. Brother Sorrel, cheerful cheat at regicide, always losing with confidence, tossed his spare magazine to a stranger with the neat underhand of a man who has spent time throwing bones in mess corners. The stranger caught, fired, lived another 30 seconds because of it, a lifetime if you measure correctly. "Ramps," Celion said. It had relief in it, an apology for the relief. The storm answered with the physics of redemption. A Thunderhawk shouldered wind aside, downwash hammering the vestibule into trenches. Its ramp punched into snow like a judge closing a case. The dorsal gun walked a crisp line across the nave and turned several hundred arguments into mist. Vox spike ripple, then lock. The craft's array bullied the weather into registering their reality. The downwash slapped angels to knee and spun Tyranids like ragged prayer flags. The smell of hot oil and ionized snow swept the place clean for a heartbeat before the dirt returned. "Emerald Vow, first Hawk," Varican said with a lunch order tone that steadied men. "Standards fill behind." The wall pivoted, shepherding broken squads with the crook of geometry. Drennick was last through because he preferred clean floors to clean consciences. He reached for the ramp switch and hated the act of turning his back with a white, clean hatred he would remember if he had lived. He pressed the control. The ramp thought briefly about mercy, then started to rise. The silent hunt boarded next, bikes snarling up the incline like black beasts reluctant to cage. A leaper landed on Tyrion's saddle and made a suggestion about ownership. Tyrion's blade cut the suggestion into confetti. Orath put a bolt through the confetti out of a sense of completeness. Kaelin's rear wheel hopped on the lip, bit metal, and the bike purred as if happy in captivity. Salion broke from his mount in 3 strides and mated Auspex to shipmast with the delicacy of a man returning a hawk to perch. In the gun bay above, a servitor chattered a laugh that was probably a jam clearing. No one corrected its manners. Second hawk inbound, Celion added, calmer now, because numbers relax when machines talk to machines. The jump packs tried to land clean. One bounced off the vestibule arch and crawled the last meter with a pack coughing smoke. 2 hormagaunts clamped his greaves like anchors and died to his ignition burst. The pack coughed, gutted, and died too. Another jump brother dropped, got halfway across the ramp, and a leaper's shadow knocked him sideways into a bay wall. He slid, leaving a bright smear he would not be available to apologize for later. Brother Venner's absence sat in the formation's voice like a missing rung on a ladder. No one mentioned it aloud, because no one could afford the breath. The assaults bled up the second ramp, 6 of 12, one carrying the snapped hilt of Brother Teriel's sword like a relic found in mud. Their new sergeant's jaw hung crooked, reset badly. He smiled anyway, because it annoyed pain to be ignored. Brother Admon paused half a step to wrench a saint's broken faceplate from a gaunt's claws. Not for you, and then threw it away because sentiment weighs more than ammunition. The heavies had 2 left. 1, helmet cracked, 1 optic blind, plates furred with impact-crazed ice, walked stiffly, and sighted an imaginary lane as he boarded, finger twitching on a weapon no longer there. The other's pauldron smoked where a bioacid splash had melted purity script into dark rivulets. He fumbled at the strap, Lisan's old habit of fixing everything before someone else had to do it, and then stopped, realizing there was no longer a second set of hands to help. Behind them on the nave floor, Brother Corvin's helmet had been kicked under an arch by the tide. The lion on its brow had a chip that looked intentional. Brother Lyson did not complain about the ramp's angle. The quiet was thicker for that. The standard cadres kept dying in tidy increments. A pair reached the lip and turned to cover. A bright bolt from a stolen human pistol took one across the grill. He fell backward into the bay with a sound that made 2 men flinch without permission. The other grabbed his harness on reflex, felt it snap, looked out into the vestibule where the man he had tried to save slid away like a package down a slope, and spent 2 rounds he could ill spare buying him a second he could not use. Garen pulled him inside with a tug that hurt both their shoulders. "Count," the sergeant said, and the brother did, because numbers are fences for panic. "Third hawk," Salian said. 30 seconds, half a minute, 2/3 of a half. It was humor so dry it might also have been stress. Either way, it made 2 men breathe out a laugh and breathe back discipline faster. The Oathbound were last by doctrine and habit and personal taste. "Rear," Abriath said, as if the word were written in their gene seed, and it may as well have been. They set themselves where the door had to be, and for a while it was. Dominiel's flail took a lictor that had been counting heartbeats and miscounted. The studs punched jurisprudence into its skull and left room for Zephonese to write punctuation below it. Lutherian put his shield where law requires a seal. Ramiel crushed 3 chests with 1 swing because the laws of impact had been correct today, and that pleased him. A last standard squad reached the ramp, a tattered banner of green without a pole. Their sergeant did a neat pivot to slap the control on the second hawk, and died with the act half finished. The brother behind him, who had served with him 9 years and had heard 9 years of mutters about waste in the ranges, finished the switch, and felt the wrongness of doing it with the wrong hand. He would remember to pick up spent cartridges for a month after, then forget. Someone else would remember instead. The third Thunderhawk dropped and shoved the storm aside like a rude cousin. Its ramp hit snow with a declarative thud. Its dorsal mount swept the clearstream. A brief constellation of tracers stitched leapers into mist. A side sponson raked the naves mid-level and turned a Genestealer pack into a wet signature on the wall. In the bay, men stumbled as downwash punched at them. Tie-down chains rattled. A deckhand servitor rotated its blank face toward the weather and clicked as if counting. "Rear 2 squads," Varrican said. Then knights. Kalen took the farmost slice into the third bay, turned the bike sideways on the lip as if dancing, boot skimming stone, blade low just to keep elegance alive. Orath followed, tire chewing chips from the ramp's edge as if hungry. Tyrion came without comment and took the angle that made anyone thinking of leaping into the bay reevaluate their theology. Vaynar's voice counted. Celion's screens sang lies and truths, and the ship made their noise into safety. The last standard fragments arrived as pieces. A 3 with no sergeant, a 5 with a man missing half a leg and still firing, propped in the crook of the ramp rail as if furniture. A 2 carrying a third whose armor leaked black like a broken sensor. One jumped, rolled, came up to cover and met a claw through the grill. The second shot the creature off him, and then braced his brother's head where it lolled. He said, "Stay," and then hated himself for saying a thing that could not be obeyed. Brother Merrick pushed past, slammed a spare mag into the living man's weapon, and shoved him bodily into the bay with the briskness of a man tidying a shelf falling down. "Move," he said, and did not look to see if he had been thanked. "Oathbound," Abriath said at last, because Mercy had finished negotiating with facts. Dominiel backed 2 steps and 1 more. Zephanis reversed with a flourish that would have been showing off if a leaper hadn't picked that exact line to die on. Lutharian's shield met a Genestealer on the lip and reduced its momentum to etiquette. Ramiel swung one last time for comprehension. They boarded, not in haste, angels do not run, but in that faster-than-they-like pace that admits the existence of the future. A final lictor leapt from the smoke and drove into Malvin's banner. Cloth tore along a ragged claw path until it met wax and the lion and stopped, because some paint was written as law. Lutharian introduced the creature to the deck with prejudice. Zephanis suggested a throat correction. Mortalis stamped approval. "Up," Varrican said, and 3 ramps rose together like sentences completing. Snow tried to follow. Snow was refused. The dorsal guns wrote brief horizontal epitaphs across the nave. The Thunderhawks shrugged the storm onto their wings and pulled the sky down into obedience. Below, the spire closed its throat, not delicately, with the immemorial violence of geology remembering itself. The hole that had been the hive's mouth sealed under plates of ice that had not been there, and now had always been there. The last visible bodies were scrubbed from sight by a gust that came from nowhere and went nowhere, as if the building had decided to swallow its own testimony. The echo died. The word unforgiven remained, not in air, but in the work left to do. Inside the bays, the sound changed register. The Wrath's atmosphere answered with metal and breath, and the clean cruelty of a forced draft. Angels stood where they had earned the right to stand, because the ramp had removed permission from the enemy. Helm seals hissed contamination rites in sequence. Servo arms descended with incense nobody wanted, and solvent everybody did. A Medici servitor found a jump brother laid out like a broken wing and tried to be kind with a drill. Kindness looks like a drill on a ship that is also a monastery. Varicon planted the banner pole into the deck with a sound that satisfied more than it should. Malvin's hands were steady. Wax cracked along the gash and would have to be scraped and relaid. Ephraim's voice took 3 breaths to remember how loud it ought to be. Jorath leaned his helm against a bulkhead too long. Garen flicked the back of his head and left his hand there 1 heartbeat more than necessary. Druven stood by the hatch and checked each brother who passed with a glance that was both inventory and benediction. Kalen wiped his blade on a cloth like a man cleaning an heirloom. Orath flexed his gauntlets, muttering something about recaf they would never argue over again. Tyrion stood by the ramp as if disappointed it had closed. Celion watched Data stitch ship to planet into one dishonest picture and disliked having to learn a new grammar. Vaynar unplugged, blinked, and reported nothing, as if that, finally, were a gift. The Oathbound stood like furniture that can bite. Dominiel turned Mortalis once. The studs ticked against his wrist guard in a sound like a funeral ring. Lutharion looked at his cracked shield and did not touch it. What is broken that still does its work gets to keep its secret. Zephanis chuckled, then stopped when no one answered. Joy was expensive here. Ramiel kept silence, having said enough. Abriath itemized the dead in his head, then the living, then the distance between those numbers and the next fight. Losses tallied in neat, brutal lines. Heavy intercessors. 2 living, 1 critical. The rest already the Gene Vault's grim work. Assaults, half lost, the remainder bleeding in interesting ways. Jump packs, a third aloft, a third grounded forever, a third in between. Standards, fragments, squads made of tatters and will. The triad, intact, bloodied, unbowed, carrying the memory like an extra plate. Someone placed Brother Teriel's broken chainsword hilt on a crate, teeth missing, oil dark in the cracks. Brother Corvin's tally knife lay beside it, its last mark unfinished. Brother Lyson's tin cup, dented at the lip where he'd clicked it against mess trays to demand hotter recaf, clinked as the ship hit a pocket of turbulence, and then went still. Brother Venner's upside-down insignia plate, fished from a jump harness by a grim jump sergeant who wouldn't say how, sat face down, the joke finally right way up, only because no one had the heart to turn it. Through hull and storm, the spire sent no more echoes. It had told its story. The swarm kept telling its own, but lacked a tongue now that the angels had taken theirs away for the day. Count, Varrican said, and a dozen voices answered in tidy cruelty. Names, numbers, squads, Emerald Vow, diminished, entire, standard cadres. In pieces, enough to be a backbone if the spine could bend. Heavies, gone but for 2. Assaults, 6 of 12. Jump, 4 who would fly again, 3 who would not, several who would learn to sit with chaplains until words fit their mouths. Celion added what he always adds, the thing men rely on when they are not allowed comfort. We have the measure of the distance. We will not be surprised by it again. Silent hunt, Kalen said, and Vaynar, Tyrion, Orath answered in the voice a hunting animal uses to tell itself the bones are not broken yet. Oathbound, Abriath said, and the reply was the sound a door makes when it closes because it is time. Celion lifted his helm. The hive adjusts, he said, the way a man complains about weather not yet here. Varadiel reports pressure against the wards from below. We will be listened to if we linger. We do not, Varrican replied, and the decks under his boots agreed by transmitting the Wrath's turn. The gunships climbed a stair carved from blizzard. The storm tried to put its hands over their mouths. The engines pried the fingers away and told the sky what was happening, whether it wanted to know or not. In the bays, Brother Merrick found himself rubbing the brass lion he had stolen from Kenvar's corpse until his gloves squeaked. He stopped when he realized others were watching, and put his hand flat on the crate beside Teriel's hilt, as if swearing something that had not been asked. Orath, passing, grunted, "He'd have eaten yours too," and Merrick surprised himself by laughing once, cleanly, and then not again. No one argued in the mess that cycle. There was no mess, only solvent and rights. When there was, later recaf steamed uncomplained about. Sparring cages rang without shouted scripture. A jump harness hung with its insignia the right way up and no one touched it. A pair of range cartridges rested by the tie-downs, where Drennick would have plucked them with a noise of disapproval. Two brothers noticed and walked past, and then one of them doubled back and pocketed both and did not know why. They had not routed, they had not broken. They had burned and ground and left with that slight extra speed that makes truth feel honest. The book opening in the next chapter, wax and knives and oaths and new names, opened itself in their minds as the wrath found the dark between worlds and pointed at it like a spear. The spire's last gift was absence. The ship's last gift was count. Between them lay cost. And in that arithmetic, the chapter saw what must be purchased next. This has been Wrath of Angels. Chapter 5, Scene 4, Fighting Withdrawal. Chapter 5, Scene 5 follows.